never before. An aerial adventure over epic landscapes, where amazing people live in spectacular places. Alongside some of the world's most iconic wildlife. It's time to see Africa from above. This is Ethiopia, a land of extremes. Volcanic wastelands, giant mountains, and stunning lakes. Home to some of the rarest creatures on Earth. It's a spiritual nation where ancient religions thrive in extraordinary locations. Welcome to the land of enchantment. This is Ethiopia from above. Ethiopia, in the Horn of Africa, is a country shaped by earthquakes and volcanoes. Surrounded by the mountains and deserts of 5 nations, it's the most populous landlocked country in the world. This aerial journey starts in the arid north, traveling across the northern highlands, before following the Rift Valley down to the dramatic mountain ranges of the far south. The first stop is here, close to the country's border with Eritrea. This otherworldly landscape is known as the Danakil Depression. It lies 125 meters below sea level, and it's still sinking, because it sits on the crossroads of 3 active tectonic plates. This is the hottest place on Earth. Rain rarely falls, and any that does rapidly evaporates. Yet water can be found here. At its northernmost reaches, Danakil's Dalol crater harbors numerous hot water springs. But these vibrant pools are as acidic as battery acid, and heated to around boiling point by magma flowing just beneath the surface. Salt water reacts with the sulfur, copper, and iron in the magma, creating these dazzling colors. Chlorine lingers in the air, and in some spots is potent enough to kill. This is nature at its most extreme. But to witness the true power of the tectonic forces at play, you must travel to Danakil's center. Standing at over 600 meters tall, the Erta Ale volcano still rumbles with life. Meaning smoking mountain in the local language, it's Ethiopia's most active volcano. It has spawned one of Earth's 8 live lava lakes. Its toxic smoke can be seen for miles around. No wonder the Afar people believe it is the gateway to hell. For centuries, they've traveled across these hostile lands in search of the most lucrative of minerals. These sprawling plains were once part of the Red Sea, until rising volcanoes cut them off. The water evaporated, leaving behind 40 square kilometers of salt. In some parts, it's 76 meters deep. The Afar call it white gold. The miners dislodge huge slabs from the surface. Skillfully, they're carved into bricks to be stacked on their prized camels. These tough animals can carry around 30 bricks of salt at a time and walk 2 or 3 days to the market. Even under the blistering heat, the Afar miners produce around 1 million tons of salt a year. Traveling east into the Tigray region, the land here is still arid. But some rain does fall, and most of the population live as farmers, keeping animals and growing grains like wheat and barley. But something else took root in Tigray. Christianity came here more than 1700 years ago, and its origins are still evident in these sandstone cliffs. Carved high up in the rocks is the most inaccessible church on earth. Its senior priest, Gebre Raphael Asrus Foseha, doesn't suffer from vertigo. It's a nerve-shredding climb to work every day, one that his congregation must also make. It's thought this church was established by Abuna Yumata, one of 9 saints who traveled to Ethiopia from Byzantium in the 5th century. Perhaps Abuna Yamata built so high to be nearer to his God. For the senior priest, the skeletons of his predecessors are a constant reminder of our short time on this earth and a life beyond death. Out across the mountains to the east and high on a plateau is the ancient holy city of Aksum. It was the capital of the first Ethiopian kingdom, founded at the end of the 1st century. An empire enriched by trade between India and the Mediterranean. These 20-meter-high stone monuments, standing in the center of the town, were erected between the 3rd and 4th centuries. They are the tombstones of ancient kings. This half-moon shape represents the god of the moon, from a time before Christianity arrived here. Out on the western side of the city, some say these ruins are the palace of the Queen of Sheba. The Bible states that she met King Solomon in Jerusalem, and in legend their child Menelik became the first king of Ethiopia, and brought the Ark of the Covenant back from Jerusalem to remain guarded in great secrecy here in the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. Today, Aksum is the country's most important holy site, a place of pilgrimage and worship. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church continues to follow early Christian teachings, practices, and traditions. Emperor Haile Selassie built this cathedral in 1965 to honor the city's religious heritage. Ethiopia remains predominantly Christian, although 1/3 of the population today are Muslim. next leg of the journey continues further south, to the wonder of the Simien Mountains. Known as the Roof of Africa, 80% of the continent's tallest peaks are here. They began to rise 30 million years ago when fissures in the earth flooded the Horn of Africa with lava a mile deep. On the hillsides you can still see columns of that lava frozen in time. Millennia of erosion has carved out sheer precipices, leaving towering peaks and high plateaus. This lofty domain is home to animals found only here, cut off from the outside world for eons by sheer cliffs. Soaring effortlessly above it all is one of the world's greatest raptors, the bearded vulture. Boasting a wingspan of over 2 meters, they fly alone looking for food, hitting speeds of 130 kilometers an hour and flying at staggering heights with barely a beat of their gigantic wings. They are the masters of the thermals. Thick-billed ravens are dining on an animal corpse. But the bearded vulture is not interested in meat. It's the only animal in the world that feeds almost exclusively on bone. Their incredibly acidic stomachs can easily digest bones weighing up to 4 kilograms. They're also the only known bird to decorate themselves, dyeing their snow-white feathers a shade of rusty red by bathing in water rich in red iron oxide deposits. Why they do it remains a mystery. Far below on the plateaus lives a species unique to Ethiopia. Gelada monkeys survive almost exclusively on the lush grasses that grow in abundance here. Grazing primates were once numerous, but now geladas are the only surviving species. Their grassy diet means they have to spend most of their day sitting down picking their food. Opposable thumbs, along with a short index finger, provide a tweezer-like grip, perfect for plucking grasses. The alpha male is almost twice as heavy as a female and gets exclusive breeding rights. He may look in charge, but there are many other males who would like to take his throne. So to stay king, he must keep the females happy. If he doesn't groom them enough, they'll choose another male to replace him. In most baboons, swellings on the rump signal sexual readiness. But geladas spend so much time sitting that evolution has instead given them a red chest patch. Female chests become more radiant and even blister when they're ready to mate. This distinctive feature earned the geladas the nickname of bleeding heart baboons. They live in tightly bonded groups, but are happy to mingle with other troops to form massive herds. Such large numbers are able to get on in relative harmony because there is little competition for the abundant grass. The gelada's aerial kingdom stretches out as far as the eye can see. Way below them, on a ridge 2,000 meters above sea level, is the site of an altogether different kingdom, the ancient city of Gondar. It was founded by Emperor Fasilides as the capital of Ethiopia in 1635. He stamped his authority here with an impressive castle. Fasil Gebi was the first castle ever built by and for Africans. Its architecture a mix of Portuguese, Moorish and Ethiopian influences. It was designed to defend Ethiopia's independence from Europe. While providing a luxurious lifestyle inside for the emperor. Just beyond the city, as a final flourish of style, Fasilides built a bathhouse fit for royalty. This fortified palace sits within a rectangular swimming pool and is accessed by a stone drawbridge. Banyan trees grow along the surrounding walls, their canopies providing shade on the hottest of days. Every January, it's filled for a festival to celebrate the baptism of Jesus. Revelers plunging into the water to renew their Christian vows. Water in this region is plentiful, receiving 80% of the country's total annual rainfall. And just a few kilometers away to the south, this abundance of water takes shape in Lake Tana. At 3,673 square kilometers, it's Ethiopia's largest lake. It's early in the morning, and the local residents are arriving for breakfast. Great white pelicans. They're highly sociable creatures, forming groups to feed together. Their pouch serving as a scoop, filling with water and hopefully fish. Pelicans are not the only hunters on Lake Tana. Fish eagles are the kings of these waters, snatching their prey at over 100 kilometers an hour. But the local fishermen have a more laid-back approach, taking fish to market, feeding their families, and sometimes sharing their scraps. It's a way of life that's remained unchanged since the 9th century. Meet 38-year-old Kasahun. He's a fourth-generation fisherman who's lived here his entire life, giving him an amazing knowledge of the lake's waters.
ምን አሰግራቸው እዚህ ጣና ሶስት አይነት አሳ ነው ያሉ እኛ ነጭ አሳ ቀረሶና ቀይ አሳ ብለን ወይም አምባዘን ናቸው ቀረሶን በተለይ ቀረሶ የዚህኛ ጣናይክ ቀረሶ በጣም ተፈላጊና ተወዳጅ ነው
Finding them is easier said than done. Fishermen here catch fish the old school way. Armed with small nets and plenty of patience, they know the lake's prime locales. It's a solitary life, but they work together to maintain the fish stocks.
አሁን ምንድነው አሁን እኛ በማህበሩ ስር ነው ያለና የዋለጉበት ሰዓት አለ አሳዎች አሁን ከሰኔ ጀምሮ ወላጆች ሰዓት ነው የሚባለው እና ሰኔኛ እናቆማለን
And modest nets mean they never take more than their fair share, ensuring the lake remains bountiful. After spending hours on the open waters, it's time to haul in the prize. But today's catch is a big disappointment. And meager harvests like this are becoming the norm. A new breed of fishermen using motorboats, bigger nets, and fishing all year round is impacting the lake's fish stocks.
አንደኛ አሁን በፊት የነበረውና አሁን የነበረው ቀንሷል። ያስ ተግማሽ ፐርሰንት ቀንሷል። ይሄም አንደኛው ዋናው አስጋሪውም በዝቷል። አስጋሪውም ብዛት አለው። እንደገናም ህገወጥ መረብ አለ።
But changes in the lake are also having an impact.
እንትኖችም አሁን በፊት የጥልቀትም ነበረው። አሁን ጥልቀቱ እየቀነሰ መጥቷል። ምክንያቱም እነዚህ ገባር ወንዞች አሉት። እነዛ ገባር ወንዞች አፈርዘው ይሰመጣሉ። ያንም ደለል የመሙላት እንደምሳሌ የዛም ምክንያት ሊሆን ይችላል እየገመታለሁ።
The modern world is encroaching. But if new generations are willing to adapt and work alongside fishermen like Kasahun, this traditional way of life can be preserved. On the southern shore of Lake Tana is the city of Bahir Dar. Every year, 130,000 tourists come here to enjoy the lake and visit another impressive sight. Not far from the city, Lake Tana's waters pour out over a massive waterfall. In 1770, explorer James Bruce identified this as the source of the Blue Nile. The locals call it Tisabay, or Great Smoke. These turbulent waters will travel on 1,500 kilometers northwest to Sudan, where they will eventually meet the White Nile. But a more recent landmark also snakes through the mountainous terrain. Built by the Chinese, this road is an essential lifeline for these remote regions. Connecting landlocked Ethiopia to the port of Djibouti in the east, ensuring goods can flow in and out of the country. Stepping off the new road invites you to take a journey into the past. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people visit this region, but not by car, on foot, as pilgrims. Because this is the location for one of the most astonishing feats of religious architecture in the world. Perched at 2,500 meters in the thin air of the Ethiopian highlands is the town of Lalibela. It's the site of 11 ancient churches, each carved from a single gigantic block of stone, as if designed to be seen from above. Built in the 12th century, it was the passion project of King Lalibela, who vowed to build a second Jerusalem in Africa. All the churches were dug out of the ground, with the most basic of tools, and with no mortar and no timber. Each building rich in complex architecture and design, linked by a kilometer-long tunnel. And the masterpiece of them all is the Church of St. George. There are no records detailing how these beautiful churches were built, but the devout are in no doubt. It was the work of angels. The most important time in Lalibela is Easter, when thousands of pilgrims arrive here for Holy Week. They've come to celebrate the resurrection in Africa's Jerusalem. Every day they move from church to church, hoping God will answer their prayers. It's a time of fasting which reaches its climax on Holy Saturday. The churches are full, and hundreds Hundreds of people are out on the streets. There's a sense of expectation. Tomorrow the fasting is over. Goats, sheep and chickens are being bought from the markets. Across the afternoon, the chanting and singing reaches new heights. The celebrations continuing into the night. Believers fill the church around midnight, where priests read from the Gospels and the Psalm of David, just as they have for centuries. White linen is the color of ceremony. A blade of grass tied around the head represents Christ's crown of thorns. The congregation chant into the early hours. In the morning, the fast is over. It's a joyous time for people like Ashanafi and his family.
Today is Easter Sunday. I have been fasting for 55 days. The fasting is over, so now we are eating any meal we want, dairy products, meat, whatever it is.
Everybody eats from the same plate. Alongside a delicious spicy stew, injera, a spongy flatbread, represents the flesh of Christ. And there's yogurt as well as difo dabo, a heavy aromatic bread baked in banana leaves and made for all big occasions.
For us as a family, we start the fast together, so we have to break also, the fasting together. And it's like, a family reunion. It's like joy for the next 50 days, all the way to the Pentecost.
Leaving the peace of Lalibela, the next step of the journey is Ethiopia's capital city, 340 kilometers due south. Seen as a place of great promise by its founders in 1886, it was named Addis Ababa, or New Flower. It's the highest city in Africa and home to more than 5 million people. And it's living up to the promise of its beginning. The city today is modernizing fast. Its skyline, road systems and metro testament to a vast urban makeover. And more people are coming to Addis in search of work. As the only sub-Saharan African nation never to be colonized, it's fitting that the headquarters of the African Union sits in Addis. The ambitious architecture includes a 100-meter-high office building and a vast circular conference center where African leaders come together to discuss trade and security. Ethiopia's economy is booming, and while poverty persists, there's an undeniable energy and optimism on the streets of Addis Ababa. And the country's enterprising spirit can be seen in Mercato, Africa's largest open-air market. Around 500,000 people pass through here each day, including the 200,000 who live and work in the district. You can buy pretty much anything here, including food, textiles, and imported electronic goods. And bartering is a way of life. The locals like to say that around here you can even bargain for a new song. The market contributes up to 25% of Addis Ababa's annual revenue. So despite the city's modern buildings, Mercato is the real economic hub of Addis Ababa. Looming over the congested and polluted streets of Mercato, on the edge of the city, is Mount Entoto. And on its slopes, Ethiopians are playing their part in an inspirational movement. Meet Mukoyo Mamo. He's leading a team of tree planters.
One of our projects is this one, Entoto Natural Park, and we are planting more than 600,000 trees here. In this year also we have preparing to plant more than 165 hectare land of the indigenous trees.
It's painstaking work, but today's tree planting is one small link in a response to global warming that cuts right across Africa, uniting 11 countries. It's called the Great Green Wall, and its aim is to plant trees for 8,000 kilometers across the southern edge of the Sahara. This expanding desert zone has become the front line of climate change, and millions of locals are already facing its devastating impact. Planting the trees reverses desertification by preventing soil erosion and providing nutrients for other plants and crops to grow.
Climate change issue is very serious everywhere, so I am happy to work here.
Once complete, the Great Green Wall will be the largest living structure on the planet, 3 times the size of the Great Barrier Reef. It's a global symbol for humanity tackling its biggest threat. People like Mukoyo Mamo working together to build a better world for generations to come. The next stage of the journey exits Addis Ababa, following the country's first expressway. It went operational in 2014 and has already served more than 30 million vehicles. But it's not long before this modern feat of engineering crosses an ancient landscape. A few kilometers out of the city, the mountains fall away, and a lush valley runs southwards. This is the Great Rift Valley, created 30 million years ago when volcanic activity in the Danakil Depression tore the land apart, creating a rift that runs for 5,630 kilometers right down the length of eastern Africa to Mozambique. Its high plateau walls revealing just how far the land has dropped. The Rift Valley is a world unto itself. A lush region of grasslands, forest, and rolling hills. Rich in biodiversity, it supports hundreds of bird species and much of Africa's varied wildlife. But there's one species that's becoming harder to find. So conservationists are taking to the skies. The team scour the landscape, looking for one of Ethiopia's rarest mammals, elephants. The 1980s, the country has lost 90% of its population. Poaching, habitat loss, and conflict with farmers all taking their toll. Now, herds like this in the Rift Valley form part of the only viable elephant population in the Horn of Africa. Knowing exactly how many are left is an essential part of their conservation. The team covers thousands of kilometers, counting every single elephant. It's slow work, but the data they collect will help to ensure that Ethiopia's amazing landscapes and wildlife will be protected for generations to come. Following the Rift Valley further south, as it carved through the country millions of years ago, it opened up canyons that filled with water, creating a chain of interconnected lakes. One of them is Lake Langano. Minerals like sulfur turned the lake brown. Many believe that the water has healing properties. It's certainly the only lake in Ethiopia free of bilharzia, making it a safe place to swim. Around Langano's shores, the wildlife is plentiful. One man who knows this more than most is photographer Aziz Ahmed. He has built his home by the lake.
When I started to grow up, I started to love wildlife. So I started the photography, started to make films.
Aziz is now Ethiopia's most famous wildlife photographer, motivated by a passion for his country's wild places. And now he uses his camera to educate and inspire the people of Ethiopia.
We have more than 100 million people in our country. They have to know what beautiful country that we have. I keep posting wildlife, keep posting short videos that they can understand what is wildlife means.
But he will always have a special relationship with lions, one that was shaped by tragedy.
When I was 9 years old, my dad was a professional hunter. First he shot the lion, and then the lion attacked my dad. And then he could not come back to the campsite. He was so wounded, so he passed away.
Rather than revenge, this experience inspired Aziz's future career.
I went to the place where my dad was killed by the lions. After I saw that lion, I started I want to start the film. I want to make a documentary. I want to live with this lion.
Ethiopian lions, known for their unusually black manes, were feared extinct until a population of around 50 were rediscovered in 2016. Now Aziz is committed to documenting their lives and is setting up a foundation to protect them. 40 kilometers south from Lake Langano is Shashamane. It's a busy town of over 100,000 people, but for a few hundred residents living on the outskirts, it's more than a town. It's the promised land. Hailu Tufari, also known as Bandi, is one of many Rastafarians who came home to Africa from the West to live in Shashamane.
This land here, sir, in Ethiopia, is the promised land, it's Zion land, it's everything to us. We didn't just come and choose. It's Haile Selassie choose this land for us.
Haile Selassie was the Emperor of Ethiopia. His coronation in 1930 made him the most famous African in the world. He crystallized a desire among African people for liberation from the tyranny of a Western world that had enslaved their ancestors. Some even saw Haile Selassie as a living god and began a religion, adopting his birth name, Rastafari.
He revealed himself to us because we are the trumpeters, which meaning to say we're going to advocate and herald his name.
Rastafarians celebrate Haile Selassie by smoking cannabis, twisting their hair into dreadlocks and drumming and chanting.
This music, this rhythm, this melody, we use it to give praises unto the Most High.
This community in Shashamane goes back to the 1950s when Selassie gave 500 acres of his land to people in the West who wanted to repatriate.
I lived in the UK for 4.5 years. Coming here, I was on culture shock. So I just fit in. I had to think what I'm going to do.
Bandi found a solution in bananas, using almost every part of the plant to create these amazing pieces of art.
I use the leaves. I use the body of the tree. I don't use colors. I don't use stains. I don't use varnish. Everything is natural.
Gaining world renown, collectors of his work even include former American President Ronald Reagan. Rastafarianism has also spread out across the world, propelled by the explosion of a musical movement in Jamaica.
The Jamaicans came here and heard the song, and they went back and they improvised on the song. And they come into reggae and they give it that name. But that song, that rhythm beat, is from Ethiopia.
And drumming is still the essential heartbeat of the Rastafarian community in Shashamane. A few kilometers further south is the Sidama region and its capital, Hawassa. Population around 316,000. It's an affluent lakeside city with a university, airport, and shopping malls. And it was a discovery here 1,000 years ago that influenced the whole world. Its name? Coffea arabica, or simply coffee. Now an estimated 2 billion cups of coffee are drunk around the world every day. And about 60% of Ethiopia's foreign income is from its export. Most of the beans come from this region, grown on small holdings like this one outside Hawassa, run by Kebede Jamano.
ቡና ከዚህ በፊት በቆሎ አምራች ነበርና በቆሎ ትርፋማ ስላልሆነ ቡና ይሻላል ብዬ ወደ ቡና ለወጥኩ።
Coffee grows best at elevation, so Kebede farms about 1,500 meters above sea level. The plants take around 7 years to mature. The first berries are as green as the leaves until they begin to ripen, at first to yellow, then through to a glossy deep red.
ክረምት ጊዜ ሲያርምና ኮምፓስቶ ጨምሮ ጊዜ ጠብቆ መስከረም አካባቢ ይቀላል። መስከረም መቀላ ይጀምራል። ዋናው ከጥቅምት እስከ ታኅሳስ ድረስ ያቀላውን ለቅሞ ክፍት ቦታ አልጋ ሰርቶ አልጋ ላይ ያደርቃል።
Ethiopians are of course great coffee drinkers, and they take it seriously. It's all about the anticipation. And nobody understands that better than Kebede's daughter, Kanet.
ቡናው ተፈልቶ እስኪወጣ ድረስ እንደ እንግዳ ተቀምጦ መጠበቅ፣ መረጋጋት፣ አለመቸኮል ማለት ነው።
Step 1. Wash the beans. It cleans them and moisturizes them before Step 2. Roasting the beans. And that heady aroma fills the room. Now everyone wants a cup of coffee. Stirring ensures the beans roast evenly. When the beans have turned black, they're ground by pestle and mortar.
ያስተማረችኝ እናቴ ናት። አስተምራኝም ስታፈላ አይቼም ነው እና ደግሞ ሳፈላ ከሷ ትንሽ ለማሻሻል እሞክራለሁ።
Finally, it's time to enjoy a fresh cup of Ethiopian coffee. Kebede and his family will do this 2 or 3 times a day. For Ethiopians, the process is a spiritual journey. It's a time to reflect and talk. A far cry from today's over-the-counter instant culture. High above Kebede's coffee plantation is the Bale Mountains National Park. Covering more than 2,000 square kilometers, it's a stunning landscape of mountains, plunging valleys, and wide expanses of forest. Bale has been nominated as a World Heritage Area, committed to protecting animals and medicinal plants only found in Ethiopia. And many of them live here, above the tree line, on the largest high-altitude plateau in Africa. At over 4,000 meters up in the clouds, it's a harsh and barren landscape where temperatures often fall well below freezing. All life here has had to adapt. The giant lobelia can survive being frozen. It thrusts its roots deep into the earth to access water, stores it, and grows tall to stay above the freezing ground. But one creature lives deep below the surface. The giant mole rat. This Afro-Alpine plateau is home to the entire global population. Giant mole rats only spend 20 minutes a day above ground, foraging for food. With eyes and nostrils at the top of their head, like a periscope, they can look for predators before they dare come out. And they have good reason to be cautious. Because they are the #1 food source for the ruler of this lofty domain. The Ethiopian wolf. This apex predator is highly sociable. It lives in packs but hunts alone in daytime to maximize its chances of catching mole rats. With few places to hide, this wolf is quietly stalking the landscape, waiting for a mole rat to emerge. Once it spots its prey, it must creep in quietly. Mole rats have poor eyesight, but they are acutely sensitive to vibrations in the ground. So close. The Ethiopian wolf can thrust its long snout into the burrow like a spear. But if it's too late, there's just a mouthful of mud for lunch. Another tactic is to dig the mole rat out. But in the end, patience pays off. A mole rat strays just a little too far from home. Food up here on the plain is plentiful, but the Ethiopian wolf's future hangs in the balance. It's now the rarest canid species on the planet. Threatened by loss of habitat, persecution, and lethal diseases like rabies, the Bale Mountains are its last holdout. And today, less than 500 remain. Ethiopia is a land of extremes. violent landscapes are almost uninhabitable. Other regions nurture life. Africa's highest mountains are an oasis for some of the world's most unique creatures. The diversity of life here is matched only by the many ancient traditions and rituals of its people. While the cities embody a spirit of enterprise. In the most independent nation in Africa.